moment. So, okay, and our next week you can see perfect. So it's our next speaker is Dr. Simon Goorney from the Aarhus University in Denmark. He will speak about support for Ukraine from the Quantum Technology Education European Community. So, please, Simon.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Araceli, for your talk also about Kureka. I will sort of frame Araceli's conversation there maybe in a slightly different light, because I represent QT Edu, which is this European non-profit community, and our intention is to bring together stakeholders in quantum technology across Europe to better train the workforce of the future in exactly the same thing that we all here want. But in specifically, I'm sort of referring here to our community efforts to support education for quantum technology in Ukraine, in particular, the resulting devastation that's been caused by the crisis there now. And my heart is with all of my colleagues there in Ukraine. Many of you, I'm sure, are there now. So what we do as a community and how we can help. So I'm Simon, and to any of you, we are compiling, so you will see it mentioned in this talk, we compile relief efforts for Ukrainian education and for academics and relocation support and things like this. If you know of any, please just drop me a message or an email, and we will add them so that they're available for everyone. But then you'll understand a little bit more about why I ask that as we go through. Okay, so some background to how we got to where we are in Europe with quantum technology education. So in 2016, Europe decided, many of the world's developed countries decided that we want to be world leaders in this quantum revolution. So America had an equivalent thing, Japan had some ideas, China had ideas, and Europe had their own manifesto to say, we're going to launch a really massive quantum technologies R&D program. And this led to this program called Quantum Flagship, which allocates European funding, Horizon Europe money, 1.5 billion euros over 10 years, 2020 to 2030, to different research and development projects every year. And they're in cross-cutting areas of quantum communication, quantum computing, quantum simulation, and quantum sensing. So this is an ongoing, really big research and development program. So the flagship, they decided, they came together and they set up a strategic research agenda, and they do this every few years. There will be an updated one soon. But the first one, they decided, well, we're developing all of this technology. It's going to come in the next few years relatively quickly because we're putting all this money in and they're going to start having quantum computers popping up. We're going to need to deal with this. We're going to need a workforce trained to operate this technology. So they decided, let's put aside some coordination to make sure that we build up a community so that train the rest of Europe to use these technologies in the future. And that is the Quantum Technology Education Community Action, which is what we are. And so we're a growing education community of, well, actually slightly more than 408 members, I think 411 now, from 45 countries across Europe. And we've organized many different community initiatives, and I'll show you some more in the slides in a little bit. And in particular, some of the most successful actions of this community have come from the community pilot projects, which are volunteer efforts in basically passion projects of individuals in the community that have come together to lead on to some quite significant outcomes, many of which then lead on to then future sort of more funded activities and some along the lines of what Araceli was talking about earlier. Okay, so the goal of QT Edu is building the quantum workforce. The idea here is that we know that this technology is coming quickly, and we need a community that brings together everyone to support schools, universities, companies understanding this technology and making use of it and having trained people able to operate it, and also deal with the changes in everyday life that arise from this technology. So just an understanding of the existence of quantum computers and how they might affect your company, even if you're not operating that computer, could still be important. As Araceli talked about, training for financiers or for policymakers, those things are also still important, not just for people going into research and development. So we're targeting really anyone who could benefit from quantum upskilling to any degree. So we do many things, and one of these is collecting resources and events. We have a website, qtedu.eu, where you can find a large number of events, resources. These are simulation tools that are openly available for anyone to use. They're in schools, they're for higher education, they're for companies. We have outreach events, all kinds of things you can find on this, on our portal. And we have working group meetings and other studies and collaborations that go on among the community are all available here. And it's all completely open. You just have to go on the website, you register, any of you may join, and please, well, I would encourage it. And at the top there, you see that emergency relief for Ukrainian scientists that I mentioned, was where we are compiling resources. So for any of you who are in Ukraine and who are maybe looking for any kind of relief opportunities, are there. Other things that we do. So Araceli talked about the lack of a universal language. Well, it's something we've tried to address with the competence framework for quantum technologies, which is a map of possible competencies available in the field. And so it's based on a Delphi study of the community. So we've taken experts and we've interviewed them and we've tried to find out what they think are the important aspects of the field. We developed it. It's an iterative process with expert interviews and questionnaires sent out to many people. And what we've ended up with is something like this, with a sort of structure with sort of rough sort of topic areas, if you like. Here's one about the basic sort of concepts, and maybe one about the physical foundations, the platforms. And then within each of these, there are specific competencies that you may cover. And you can see why this would be a useful thing. I mean, you can maybe imagine mapping a university curriculum with the competence framework, or looking at those skills required in a job. And so if you did both of those things, then you would have your universities with your curriculum very clearly mapped out, and your graduates knowing precisely which jobs they should be targeting based on their competences, based on their skills. So it's designed for this kind of matching. And to even help with that further, we've been working on these qualification profiles, which are still in development, but these are the profiles of individuals working in quantum research and development. So they are, for example, what the kind of things that you might be able to do if you were, say, the more easier examples are if you were a software engineer, say. A quantum computing software engineer should be skilled in quantum computing and simulation, and maybe have skills in programming and basic concepts, etc. And then with these, that can be worked out for each different job. So that's the idea with the qualification profiles. An interesting profile that emerged is this idea of the strategist, which is maybe someone like a policymaker or a leading financier who understands the field and maybe understands opportunities within the field, business-wise, for example, but maybe doesn't need quite so much of the hands-on experience as the others. But these profiles exist just as much as the other ones do. Okay, so what else do we do? Well, we're building a community. This has really been the goal of QT Edu, and we're coming to an end, but very proud that after the 3 years, we have assembled 411 members. And we've been running these pilots and working groups to discuss and exchange ideas in quantum technology education. So there are 11 pilots which have been running, and some of these are really fantastic community efforts. There pilots in master's education, in school education, and in teachers, content knowledge and understanding. And we've talked a little bit about teaching quantum in high school. It's still a bit of an open field on the best way to teach quantum in high school. And that these pilots are looking at exactly that. I mean, we have this one, which is looking at quantum concept development with two-state approaches, so teaching quantum from a different angle. We have this one, which is looking at using simulation tools and things like this in the classroom. So this one, which is looking at how teachers understand the quantum that they teach. So there are many different people exploring this world so we can understand it best. And we understand that there are two timescales here. There's the immediate need for a quantum workforce for these operating these technologies. And there's a longer timescale need for the 10-year people who are going to be building up the workforce of the future. So the students of current high schools and primary schools. And yes, we also think a lot about the external factors and how we can allow these pilot projects and these collaborations to grow into large projects from funding programs like Digital Europe. I've done some analysis of what the community wants and that sort of community profile based on people's inputs. And really what we find is that if you assemble a community like this, it's open for, it's a big field full of people looking for collaborations. And that's precisely what these pilots have demonstrated, I think. So people look for collaborations and they want to research and develop things together. And that's what we hope. We will be there. The QT Edu community is not going anywhere, and those collaborations are available. I'll go through this quickly. Currently, the flagship, that big European project, it's supported by different coordination actions, looking at its international cooperation, looking at its research development and its education action. These coordinations are merging, which is just to say that we're now being somewhat more built in to the flagship's workforce development efforts. And we plan some future actions over the next few years. So this will run until 2024. We will be hosting a virtual quantum training institute where community developed modules, training modules, and these might be things you use in a classroom or an education program, are validated and hosted online for everyone to use. So you mapped up to the competence framework. We were planning a best practice and certification scheme for industry and institutions to sort of enable everyone to benefit the most from the quantum ecosystem. We would like there to be comprehensive adoption of the competence framework, and then we will use it to have some number of model curricula across different levels of education. And there will be new pilots also. And one of these pilots is the one that is going to be mentioned here briefly in this talk. So a brief example of a pilot that has been running over the last year, a familiar graphic there on the left. But the Open Master Pilot is an example of one of these collaborations whereby universities have been sharing university courses among their staff for the students to take and build into their master degree programs. The idea is that you have a student of, say, a physics program, a non-specialist degree program, and they build in a module from a quantum, or say a course from a quantum technology program. So it might be, I don't know, might be they build in a spintronics module or photonics or something like this. And it gives them that specific quantum training, a little bit of hands-on experience, a little bit of technical language that can be the real boost they need to get started into those entry-level jobs in the industry after a master's degree. So because Araceli showed the image of the master degrees in quantum technologies, that would be the ideal way for you to go ahead and become upskilled as a student. But if you weren't able to do that, if you were doing a physics degree or some other kind of STEM degree, then you could take a course from QTOM instead, and then that could maybe get you on the same track. And this is, so here's an example of some of the courses that might have been offered. And this will run again next year. And it's totally open if anyone has courses they want to add, they want to join in, or they want to make use of them. You can go to our website, qtom.qtedu.eu. And the research aspect of this QTOM pilot is to arrange for these opportunities to be accredited, and we've worked with universities to recognize the credits from different kinds of courses to enable students to take these online. At the moment, 16 universities have quantum options that were not previously available for their students, purely as a result of this volunteer effort. So we're very proud of the way that these pilots can make real changes. So yes, thank you. Thank you for listening to that, and please join the community. There's a couple more slides before you stop me there, if you have a second. I just mentioned very briefly that there another one or two of the other pilots. Here's one in outreach. So I told you about master's education, but we look also in outreach in high schools. The outreach pilot looks at storytelling and how to bring quantum to the public, for example, with museum art exhibits. You can see there in the bottom right, that's the quantum jungle, which is a visualization of a superposition state of a quantum particle. The quantum concept inventory, coordinated by Philippe Bitzenbauer and Kim Kreitenberg, is looking at quantum competencies in high school. And they're working very hard on this as well. And just recently, we started a new pilot for community support actions education in the Ukraine. And so some of the individuals here today came together and we did a discussion activity to work out what we might do as a pilot and how we might support Ukrainian quantum education with our European resources. It launched on July the 1st. And so we're going to look at things like building higher education capacity in the Ukraine. We will use some of these resources, things that we have like the QTOM pilot, the things that have come out of that, to maybe add courses into universities in the Ukraine, maybe offer online co-supervision of projects, things like this, access to online resources. We might look at some of the employment support for staff and students in Ukraine, for example, online, with the relocation support I mentioned already, but maybe online opportunities, as there are some staff I know who have military duties and can't leave the country. So we might be able to facilitate things like online teaching in European universities for staff in Ukraine who are unable to leave. Here's an example of how this might work from Oxford University. We also plan to assist with the European cooperation, which will be working on the quantum research and development side of things with the Quantum Community Network. So we'll be assisting in the joint education programs of quantum technologies and access to these, some of these Horizon and Digital Europe funding platforms as well. So thank you so much for listening. The community, as I say, is wide open. The QTOM pilot, offering the shared courses, and being involved in this Ukraine support pilot also. So please just get in contact with me if you want any more information. And it would be great to hear how we all think and if there's any time for any questions.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your interesting talk and also for your effort towards supporting Ukrainian quantum community. So we have already questions. Alexander Kordyuk, please.
Thank you, Simon, for all your for your talk and for all your efforts to help. I just wanted to ask a small question concerning I said before that we are interested, of course, to give students opportunity to include such open courses in their curriculum. But it's clear for me that students need some guide here, and it's understandable that when they saw a number of courses, that one way, if their scientific supervisor or lecturer, they could suggest them what to take, but often it's difficult because these people should pass these courses first, at least. But do you have some kind of recommendation system of recommendations, ratings on the courses which are there? Which instrument can help students to choose certain courses?
That's a really great question, and I'd say there are two instruments which can help with that. The first one already exists, and that's the competence framework, because in a world where the competence framework is adopted and all of the courses on the QTOM, for instance, platform use it, so they all have numbers associated telling you 1.1 topic X, 1.2 spin, 1.3 quantum gates, etc. So they all have those topics listed in. Then students can know exactly what they're covering from their course, and they can know exactly whether this is going to fit with what their background is and what they're looking for in the future. So that's maybe the first way, and that's possibly the simplest thing. The other thing is that, as I mentioned, in the future there will be a certification scheme for universities and course providers offered. So these modules and courses, when they go online, will be validated, and they'll be rated and checked through and rated with comments and things, so that students can look at that and see how they are. But the competence framework would be my general answer. That would probably be the way that we intend that all of these programs benefit.
Do you have some, for example, forums for students who just exchange their thoughts about courses they follow?
Yes, feedback forms we do as well. We also do have feedback forms, and they go out at the end of the courses too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have another? I just want to comment a little bit. We have here, I see here in our conference now some people from Ukrainian quantum educational community, and I highly recommend them to pay attention to this resource, Qt-Edu. This is really, so we are now communicating, speaking with this. This is a really impressive tool. So, and maybe this will help you to improve your or master programs or even bachelor programs. So this is really exciting things. So thank you very much, Simon, for doing such great things. And only maybe my impression first is that when I was trying to use your resource, that you see, you have some very special terminology, educational initiatives now use some very special language. And I believe not all people are very good oriented. So understand, for example, these differences between Coursera, curricula, educational programs or courses, so and so on. So we understand, but maybe not so clear as one could. So it maybe would be useful if you would have in your website and in your resource some explanation, maybe some guidelines, because sometimes it's very tricky to understand very tricky to understand very teeny details of your things. But this is for sure very, very powerful and very, very nice device, a very nice tool for doing this education, for collaborating with educational things.
Yes, I appreciate that. Actually, it's not something I've heard before, but maybe it would be a useful thing actually to include. If we had a glossary of some of the terminology on the website, maybe that would be something that would be useful.
Yeah, maybe some explanation, maybe some guide, maybe it would be really useful. Yeah, and just to improve this visibility. Okay, so I see no question more. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And now we are going to our next speaker. So just a moment. So can you? So Alexander, is it now recording?